Good morning, everybody. Terry Wager, Generator Coaching, and today I want to talk to you about having effective conversations. Now, a lot of people think that they're having conversations with people and they're really effective when they're actually having trouble. And so, there's a lot of people out there and a lot of people uh, that we're trying to talk to, and the conversation gets really tough. And usually, unfortunately, it's not always them. Let's face it, we all get tripped up in conversations, whether they're business, they're personal, or they're intimate conversations with the people we love. We all have trouble with conversations from time to time. And the funny thing is most of the time that we're having these conversations, it isn't the other person, it's how we're interpreting it, or we're misunderstanding what's being said, or we're misreading the body language. And so we all have problems with communicating. And the culprit really isn't the other person. We like to think it is because, well, we're looking right at them and they're upsetting us. But really, it turns out that we have this part of us, and I call it the ego. And it's a part that protects us. And that thing really inside of us starts telling us about what the other person is saying. We start listening more to ourselves than we're listening to the other person when we're having these conversations. Now, this doesn't happen all the time, but it happens 99% of the time. And so really, we're not exactly sure when that 1% it's not happening is. So you can bet that when you're having a conversation with somebody else, there's you having the conversation and then there's your ego too. And so we have to really step back and really understand what we're looking to do in these conversations. And the reality is most conversations we're having, we're trying to accomplish some kind of goal. And what happens a lot of times is that piece of us, that ego inside of us, really hijacks the conversation and starts wanting to be right rather than understand the conversation. So when we have this happen, what happens a lot of times is the conversation goes off the rails. We start wanting to be right and we start having more and more argument rather than understanding. And so I have 3 keys to effective conversations. And 3 keys start out with 1, don't take yourself so seriously. When we start taking ourselves seriously or too seriously, or any amount of serious, the other people have no room to, because we start trying to make our point rather than being able to listen to what they have to say. And I always say, if we're taking ourselves too seriously, no one else can. And so we really want to see where our ego's getting in the way. We really want to understand where we are misinterpreting, misreading, and talking to ourselves. And the funny thing is if you get really quiet and step back for just a second, you can actually notice that when you're thinking about somebody, you're talking to yourself with their voice in your head, the way they'd say it. And so what we end up doing is hearing ourselves say something in their voice, because we're practicing in our head and we're not listening to what they have to say. And so we want to, number 1, take ourselves less seriously. We want to realize that we have a lie machine on our head, and it starts about our shoulders and goes up, and it tells us about the conversation instead of really listening to the conversation. And so that leads us to our second point. And our second point is to be curious. We want to be curious about what the other person is saying. And it talks about, and a lot of people talk about active listening and being a good listener. And what the heck does that all mean? Really, what does being a good listener mean? For me, what I see a lot when I'm having conversations, and I'm guilty of it too, I end up starting to actually create my response to what they're saying before they finish what they're saying. And so I have a response based on what I'm thinking rather than what they're saying, or what my ego is telling me rather than what they're saying. And it happens to all of us. This is not something that we're bad about or we're wrong because we do it. It's a natural tendency for us. And so what we want to do is we want to, 1, take ourselves a little less seriously, and then 2, be curious about what they're saying and know that we're going to have some time to actually say something after. And what we can do is we can actually process what they've said and be able to think about what they really meant and ask questions curiously about what they mean, rather than just guess that we think we're right and then cut them off or jump in right away and say what we think about what they said. And so it's about being curious. And I have a trick for active listening. And this is how I do it when I catch myself starting to be reactive and starting to try to jump in and starting to try to turn the conversation the way I want to, so I'm right. And what I do is I start repeating in my mind what they're saying word for word. So if somebody's telling me that they're upset with me, I don't start going, well, they shouldn't be upset with me. I start going, they're really upset with me right now. And I start repeating what they're saying in my mind quietly, why they're saying it. And it brings me right back to the present and brings me more into a questioning curiosity point of view. And this is not an interrogation curiosity. This is a more, what is that like for you curiosity? And when we can ask what it's like for them, and when we can ask and be open to what they're saying about it, we start to become more empathic about it. And we get to understand more about how we came across or how they're experiencing us. And we can start actually making the relationship come together. And this is in business, in sales, in relationships, in intimate relationships, because really what we're all going for whenever we're having a relationship or when we're having some kind of interaction is we're really looking for connection. And unfortunately, one of the things that we do really, really poorly as a human race is connect, because we have two things going for us. One, we're all afraid on a base level of being rejected. And two, we all have a real desire to be right. And so when we have that desire to be right and this fear of rejection playing together, we go right back to taking ourselves way too seriously and fighting for a right. And I would rather be right and reject first than find out I'm wrong and be rejected. And so we want to be curious and realize that those are only fears, and we can really connect with these people because they're not rejecting us, they're talking to us. And when we can remember that, we can have much better conversations. And so the third part, or the third key, is really when we do get into a situation and they have upset us or they're upset, we have a choice. We can either forgive or we can make amends. If they have upset us, we can choose to forgive them right away. There is no time limit. There is no amount of time between when something happens and when we can forgive. And a lot of people think that we need a year, a day, a month, 10 years to forgive. My dad used to say, I can forgive you, but I can't forget. And the funny thing is he took himself a little too seriously. And at the same time, there was not a whole lot of forgiveness when you didn't forget, because this idea of resentment that we have, we human beings, I don't know if anybody has ever experienced a resentment, but man, they're terrible, because we re-feel that incident over and over and over. And the one clear way, easy way to get over resentment is to forgive them. They were having their own moment of taking themselves too seriously. They were having their own conversation about what was going on in their head too, because we all do it. And so when we realize that we all do this, we can allow ourselves to make those mistakes, and then we can make amends for them. If I do it, oh, it was me, I was wrong, I will do better now. And then it's not an apology. Amends and apologies are very different. Apology is, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. And after sorry for a few times and continuing to do the behavior, you do become pretty sorry. And so what we want to really look at is not being sorry, but making amends, making a change. If you think about a contract, when people amend a contract, they actually make a change. They take this out and they put this in instead. And so we actually amend it. And that's what we're talking about, making amends, is making a change in our behavior, an intentional, focused change in how we interact. And so that's what we want to do when we're wrong, is make amends. And when they're wrong, forgive them. And I tell you, for me, this has been a game changer in my relationships because whenever somebody does something wrong to me, I just make that conscious choice right then to one, not take myself so seriously, and two, be curious about what's going on with them because they wouldn't do it on purpose. They're my friends, or they're people that are interested in talking to me. People are not interested in talking to you, don't talk to you, and they don't go out and go, you know what? I think you're a cool person. I want to hurt you. So when we can step back and go, wait a minute, there's something going on with them and get more curious about it and understand where they're coming from, we can be connecting and we can be adding to the situation instead of taking away. And so the third point, again, is forgive them if they're out of line. And if we're out of line, make amends because we want them as a friend. We want them as a colleague. We want them as a customer. We want them as all of those things. And so the 3 points again are, one, don't take yourself so seriously because if you do, no one else can. And two, be curious about what they're talking about and what their experience is like. Because if they're talking to you, they want you to know their experience. They might not be able to identify the emotions that are going on. They might not be able to tell you exactly what's going on. They might be really pissed off. But they do have some emotions and they want to tell you about them. And so be curious and ask more information. And three, again, if they've upset you, forgive them. And if you've upset them and you've crossed a boundary and you've made a mistake, make amends. When we do this, our relationships grow and our networks grow and we become the people that we want to be. And we start to have more integrity, which means all of us together is much more helpful. And for me, this is the biggest thing of all. Because I want to have good relationships. I want to have good communication with everybody, especially myself, because it starts with us. And so this is all about, again, conversations with tough people, tough conversations with tough people. And the reality is for me, the toughest conversations that I end up having are the ones in my head. And so for you, if you ever notice yourself, if you notice yourself today, if you noticed yourself before and just reflecting on it right now, that you've had some tough conversations and you find yourself having to be right more than connected, step back, identify what's going on with you. Don't take yourself so seriously and realize that your head got in the way. And then be curious, forgive or make amends. It's very simple. And I have found that my relationships get so much better when I use these 3 keys. So this is Terry Wager, Generator Coaching. And if you want to learn more about this, or you want to have a conversation with me, reach out. GeneratorCoaching.com is our website, and you can reach us there or info@generatorcoaching.com. And follow us on Facebook, Generator CC after the facebook.com/. So we'll see you next time. I hope this was helpful. I hope this was enjoyable. And if I've upset you in any way, forgive me, and I will make amends. Have a good time. Have a good day. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Generator Coaching, Terry Wager. Good talking with all of you.